Howdy. My name is Nonat, and it has been a hot minute. But I wanted to swing in here and make you a quick little video, A, because it's been a little while, and B, because I kind of want to test out my new setup. As you can see, I'm a little more two-dimensional than usual. I had this wonderful model done by the ever-talented Melody on Twitter, link in the description. Go follow them on Twitter. They're an amazing person who did a great job with this. And it's allowed me to start making content again, even in my sort of inhibited condition. For those of you who don't know, I've sort of been bedridden the last few days, but I'm making as much as I can out of a bad situation, so here we are. Today, I wanted to show off a super useful tool that I feel like a lot of people might not know about, especially if they're new to Pathfinder 2nd Edition. This is a monster maker that has been published by the folks at Roll for Combat. Now, this monster maker was made specifically for their RPG Superstar contest, which is actually live right now. This is not a sponsored video, although I am going to be one of the judges in RPG Superstar this year, so if you submit a monster to the Elemental Storm competition, I might get the honor of judging it myself. Again, link and more information in the description. But that's not what we're here to talk about today. I'm here to talk about just how easy this template is for making a monster for you DMs out there, GMs out there, who might be starting Pathfinder for the first time. Maybe you want to make a custom monster. Maybe you want to recreate an existing monster in Pathfinder 2e. This is the tool you need to use. The Roll for Combat Create a Monster tool. What makes this tool so special is that it automates the monster creation rules from the Game Mastery Guide for Pathfinder 2nd Edition. What do I mean by that? What I mean, I didn't delete my Boogum's ability for testing. So what do I mean by the monster creation rules from the Game Mastery Guide? Well, there's a lot of different things that are offered as guidelines when creating a monster. One of the most useful being these right here, the roadmaps. These allow you to get recommended guidelines if you want to make a monster that's more of a physical brute, that strikes with magic, that's sort of tactical and skirmishing, long-distance sniper, commanding soldier, different types of spellcasters are skill-focused. These are roadmaps to help you build your monster. So if you want to make a strategic dex-based skirmisher, you click this and it's already going to give you recommendations for high dexterity, low strength, moderate intelligence, etc. Now, once you set your creature level, let's say we're going to make a level 6 creature, it automatically recommends exactly the number you should set for each of its different saving throws, armor classes, skill proficiencies, which you'll want to sort of mess with more yourself, but all of these different things are offered to you as guidelines that you can then tweak. So rather than trying to pull numbers out of thin air, you are given these guidelines to work with. So what I'm going to do here today is just make a monster live for you, specifically recreating one of my favorite monsters from one of my favorite series, the Toby Kadachi from Monster Hunter. Note, if you're submitting to the RPG Superstar contest, don't recreate a monster that already exists. Make your own monster. I'm doing this specifically for demonstrative purposes, and because I'm a content creator, to shill my own Twitch stream. If you are watching this video right when it came out, or within a few hours of it coming out, chances are I am live on Twitch right now with our first official Nonat Ones live streams. It's a really fun stream, but I do gotta warn you, it is an 18+ environment. It is going to be a little bit more mature, in some cases a little more immature, but overall a very different environment than what you see here on YouTube. If you are under 18 or to have delicate sensibilities, I recommend you skip this one. But if you just want more of me and a little bit more unfiltered me, we are currently going through and reviewing all of the monsters from the Monster Hunter series, so it would mean a lot if you would come over and join the stream and check it out. I hope to see you there. Now let's make Toby Kadachi. Obviously we're going to want to fill in the name, Toby Kadachi, and because I came prepared, I even have a picture of our little electric flying squirrel who I love so much. Toby Kadachi, it's not a low-level monster, but it's also not an endgame threat. I'm going to say like level 6 sounds good. You know, this thing could terrorize a village if given the opportunity, but any hunter worth their salt can take one down. We are going to give it the beast type, and it is large because it's it's probably about 15 to 20 feet long, which might technically be huge by Pathfinder standards. But if it like coils up like it's shown in the image, it would be sort of like 10 feet by 10 feet by 10 feet, so we'll go with a large size. We're also going to go ahead and use the Skirmisher roadmap because Toby is very much a fast-paced, whittle-you-down kind of monster. Typically, it's not going to hit you with one massive strike to try to kill you in one hit. Rather, it's going to dart around, it's going to use some projectiles, it's a very tactical fighter. Also, it has the power of electricity, which we are going to add as a trait. Thanks to our Skirmisher roadmap, we already know that it should have low strength, which I'm actually going to bump to moderate because this thing does hit pretty hard, but I'm going to drop its constitution to low. In the games, Tobi-Kadachi is pretty easy to stagger and knock down and kind of beat up and bully if you're good at it, but I'm going to give it a little more wisdom, I think, as well, just because it is a smart creature, it uses its environment, it hangs from the walls, and wisdom to me really represents some of that primal, innate instinct versus intelligence, which is more learned stuff. So we've set all of our things here. We can just click on the hints and it's going to automatically set all of its ability score boosts, which is spectacular. As I said, for its defenses, it's not the most durable thing in the world. However, remember, armor class is more than just your armor. It's also your ability to avoid getting hit. So with a high dexterity but a low constitution strength, I think moderate armor class is perfect. Low fortitude makes absolute sense, same with high reflex. I'm tempted to give it a low will save because it is a beast, but I think rather than just going all the way to low, which is a plus 11 here, I'm just going to change that plus 14 to a plus 13. Remember, at all of these times, you do not need to follow the roadmap. They are just a guideline. You can adjust things +1, -1, however you want to, whenever you want to. As for hit points, again, I think moderate is a good place, especially in the style of game that Monster Hunter is, which is sort of everybody versus one boss monster. We don't want it to have too low of hit points, otherwise the fight might end before it even begins. I think 95 to 100 is a really perfect middle ground for a level 6 monster, especially if it's a big boss fight. Maybe your party's about level 4, they just got striking weapons, so maybe they're hitting for like 10 to 20 damage on a normal hit, which, with that in mind, maybe 95 is actually too low, but you do take into consideration the fact that they might miss, the fact that sometimes they might crit. You know, it's a TTRPG. Sometimes they're going to kill your boss in one turn, other times they're going to miss every attack in TPK, and there's nothing you can do about it. Going off of my knowledge of the game, I am going to give Tobi-Kadachi a 5 resistance to electric damage. You know, its quills, its feathers, its scales all conduct electricity to the point where this thing can handle it. You know, electric arc is not going to be a great option against Toby. As for its perception, I am going to bump that to high. The Tobi-Kadachi is a very perceptive, quick to react creature, and especially when something like perception is used for initiative in Pathfinder 2e, and the way that Toby is sort of a jittery, quick to react flying squirrel type creature, I think a high perception is great. Now for skills. Skills is probably one of the hardest to decide factors when building a monster. How many skills should they have? How strong should those skills be? There's some general guidelines. Basically, typically the smarter your creature is, obviously the more skills it should have, but in general, a really safe bet is to give a creature 1 or 2 high skills, 1 or 2 moderate skills, and 1 or 2 low skills, again, depending on intelligence. Since Toby is a beast, and you know, they're not stupid, but they're not necessarily sentient, as it were, I think 1 high skill, 2 moderate skills, and 2 low skills sounds great. Toby is known for their massive flips and flops and crazy maneuvers, so I think giving it a high acrobatics skill makes a ton of sense. Its stealth skill being moderate is absolutely totally fine, so is its survival skill. I think it would make a good tracker. It's really at home in the wild. As for its low skill, let's give it a little bit of athletics. It doesn't have to be a high bonus, but that way we actually have something to compare it to if it needs to make a grapple check or an escape check or something. It has athletics as an option, even though its strength score is relatively low. It's a beast, so we don't need to worry about items, and now we can move on to the offense. Toby is fast. I don't think that it's going to be that much faster than maybe a player character. I think a wolf has like a 40-foot move speed. Let's give Toby a 35-foot move speed. I think that is totally fair. And now we get to decide its attacks. One at a time, we're going to add its attacks. I think I'm going to give it 2 different melee attacks and a ranged attack. Feel like a really good way to start this. Now, something really important to mention, if you're making an animal or a beast like Toby here, and it's going to attack with its claws, it is specifically a claw attack, and if it is going to bite with its mouth, it is a jaws attack. This might sound really semantic and redundant, but Pathfinder 2e uses very specific terminology for a reason. I've had an in-depth discussion with Mark Seifter about this, and these will always be a claw strike and a jaws strike. It's not a bite attack, it's not a swipe attack, it's none of those. It is always claw and jaws. And the reason I'm hammering home so hard on this is because if you're submitting a monster for the RPG Superstar contest, you need to have this kind of thing right. It might not be the deciding factor of whether your monster makes it or not, but it does show a level of polish and a level of understanding of the base game itself. So when in doubt, look up a similar monster that already exists and see how it works. Specifically for Toby here, to make sure I was accurate, I looked up the tiger monster from Pathfinder 2e, obviously, and it is specifically jaws. It is specifically claw. I was actually going to write claws, but I wasn't sure, and I looked it up, and it is claw, not claws, even though it's jaws, not jaw. It can get very confusing, so double check your work. As usual, the jaws are going to be a little bit more powerful, but the claw is going to have the agile trait, so it's typically going to want to maybe open with a jaws attack and then follow it up with a slightly more accurate claw attack. I think its jaws should be a little, they can both be about the same accuracy. They're both very finely tuned attack options. I think we'll go ahead and make them both moderate here. As for damage, you also get recommendations. On the left here, we have 2d12 plus 10 for a way higher damage range, and then all the way down to a weak attack of 2d4 plus 7. I think the jaws dealing 2d8 plus 9 and the claws dealing 2d6 plus 8 is perfect. You want the less accurate attacks to deal more damage. If something has the agile trait for that reduced multiple attack penalty, it should deal less damage to make up for that reduced penalty. You can't make them deal the same damage, otherwise it'll pretty much always want to deal the claws attack because it's just better. As for damage as well, our jaws we want to be piercing because they're twofers, they're teeth. And for claws, we want slashing. Again, just give your monster that little bit of different options for damage types as well, can make fights even more dynamic. Even if it never interacts with a specific resistance or weakness, it helps you in describing the attack. If Toby hits with those jaws, it might pierce through your armor and stab you in the shoulder with its sharp teeth. Whereas if it swipes with its claws, it might rake across your arms, ripping the skin up or something. It helps you paint the picture in your mind so you can then paint the picture for your players. As for its ranged strike, we're going to go ahead and give it, how do I want to call this? We'll call it a charged feather. And this one is actually going to be incredibly accurate because these fly really fast if you're not ready for them. They are going to have the electricity trait. And as for damage, since they are even more accurate and a ranged attack, they're only going to deal 2d4 plus 7 piercing damage, but then let's make it a little more interesting and add plus Thunderblight, which we'll get into in a little bit here. We're not going to go so far as to add spells just for the sake of keeping it simple today, because spellcasters, honestly, kind of a nightmare to make. You can make some really interesting characters with spells in them, and that's a lot of fun, but take it from me, if you can make a spell into a special ability, do it. It lets you play around with it more, it lets you avoid having to reference a specific page in a specific book, which just makes your whole presentation look cleaner, and overall, it shows more creativity if you can create a quote-unquote new special ability rather than just saying Fireball CRB page 400 and something. So for the sake of keeping things simple, let's just go ahead and add 2 abilities right now. We want to describe our Thunderblight here, which has the electricity trait. So I want to mimic the effects of Thunderblight in Monster Hunter for the game. Of course, some things are going to be changed in the translation, so I'm going to say, when a creature is afflicted by Thunderblight, See, this is a really important part of monster creation, especially if you're trying to do it on a professional level. I don't know the exact way to word this, so what I'm about to do is go looking through monsters in my bestiary to try to find a similar effect. You know, I'm going to go look for a monster that afflicts some kind of ability that when that ability is afflicted, they need to make a saving throw, so I know exactly what my wordage needs to look like. Okay, so I found the Viper Vine here, and while it's not the exact same thing I'm going for, it's close enough with its captivating pollen ability that I can sort of mimic it. So you almost always want to start with a little bit of flavor text, something like, the Tobi-Kadachi's feathers are charged with electricity, shocking the nervous system of its prey. A creature struck by Thunderblight must make a DC, let's see, we'll have to think of a decent DC for a level 6 creature here. 23 or 24 would be a standard difficulty DC for a level 6 character, and I think because this is an ability it can use as much as it wants with no real cooldown or drawback on it, I think making it a DC 22 is fine since it can do this multiple times per turn. So a creature struck by Thunderblight must make a DC 22 Fortitude save, and then we can start adding some different effects. So you can see as I'm typing critical success, success, failure, and critical failure, it's actually automatically bolding it for you. Another amazing thing about this tool, it knows the key common terms in the game so that it can fill them out for you in the right formatting. It's great. On a critical success, we will say no effect, and the target is immune to Thunderblight for 1 hour. So that way, if you critically succeed, you don't have to worry about it for the rest of the fight. If you succeed, there's just no effect. If you fail, target is stunned 1, and if you critically fail, target is stunned 2. You know, in the games, Thunderblight makes you more susceptible to stun, so I think that these feathers basically costing you actions if they hit you and you fail your saving throw is a cool little dynamic. It can help the Tobi stand up to a multi-character party by reducing the other side's action economy, which is a really dynamic way to interact. You know, it might want to keep its distance and keep throwing feathers because it'll slow down the party, but they do less damage than its claws and jaws, so, you know, there's something to play around with there. And I think, again, this might not be perfect wording. I'm throwing all this together on the fly for the video. Double check your work, craft open your bestiary, and try to find as close things as possible. This is absolutely not perfect. I would not submit this in its current form. I would spend a while going back through everything and making sure it all looks good. Let's wrap this up by giving it a new special ability, an offensive one that costs 2 actions, because if there's one thing the Tobi is well known for, it is its Tail Slam, which does some massive damage and actually also has that electricity trait. So I've actually sort of written myself into a corner here because Tobi doesn't have a normal Tail Strike. This would be really easy to word if I had given it a Tails melee strike, but I don't want to necessarily give it a Tail Strike because I think it'll clutter things up. So my options here are to sort of rework our Tail Slam ability or replace the Claw or Jaws, and I think I will just replace the Jaws attack with a Tail Strike. I want to make sure I'm using that correctly. I know dragons have, yeah, a Tail Strike. Dragons are a great source of knowing your formatting for your attacks, by the way, because they have jaws, claws, tail, horns, but, you know, they're a high-level creature. They can have that many. I think replacing jaws with tail is fine, because now we don't have to change the damage. Oh, we do want to change this to bludgeoning instead of piercing with the tail, but now we can write the Tobi-Kadachi makes a single tail melee strike against all creatures in a 10-foot cone. Any creature hit by this attack is also struck by Thunderblight. Again, probably not perfect wording. There's probably better ways to word the struck by Thunderblight, but I'm on the spot here. And overall, that's a decently interesting monster, you know? He's got his classic little claw attack, he's got some slashing damage, bludgeoning damage, and piercing damage. That actually wasn't my intent, but yeah, he actually has all 3 types of basic physical damage. Plus, while he doesn't deal electric damage, it's still utilizing the theme of electricity and the Thunderblight from the game to get the targets stunned. It's almost an annoying fight in some ways if you keep failing your fortitude saves, because you're going to keep losing actions. You don't want to clump up so that he can use his Tail Slam. This is a really fun ability that the GM can kind of pull out of nowhere if the party accidentally clumps up too much. There's a lot of fun to be had with this, and I'm honestly pretty happy with him. For a little level 6 beastie, I think it's a really fun little boss fight for maybe a crew of level 4 characters. But Let me know what you think. That is all for me. I got to wrap this up and edit it so I can get it live before I go live in like 2.5 hours from now. So I got a bit of work to do. Hope you'll come join me over on Twitch again if you are watching this right when this went up. If not, hopefully you'll join me in the future. We're going to be doing a lot of streams over there. And it's just good to be back. So thank you everybody so much for sticking around. Thank you for all of you watching my backlog in my absence. And looking forward to more cool content coming forward. So I'll talk to y'all later. And until next time, no Nat Ones.